Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Dr. Scott here with the Education Game, and I've got the mighty Matt sitting beside me today. Actually, he's not sitting beside me. I'm in Vermont. He's in Texas.
Virtually sitting
I'm,
beside you.
yeah, I'm chilly. He's warm.
Yeah.
Um, so happy 2021, Matt.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Didn't think we'd make it, but it's good to be here.
Yeah. You have any resolutions?
We don't do resolutions, but we do a lot of planning. So we have, we've got a bunch of plans. You may have seen some of these, Scott. Like, maybe, did I show you these?
Um,
I guess probably not.
I don't know.
Yeah. So plans, essentially what, goals for this upcoming year, real action steps associated with it. I've got 20 books that I'm going to read this year. I hit my goal of 20 books last year. Exercise goals, faith related goals, relationship goals. We have a whole process to it.
So in your family, goals mean resolutions.
Yeah, resolutions,
Yeah.
they can't have the same weight. So we actually have goals and then action items and then like short term, medium term, long term check ins on a periodic basis. So yeah, this is legit stuff. We're getting after it,
So
Scott.
so actually you're using the smarter and stronger learning equation. Define,
Oh yeah,
plan, execute, evaluate.
absolutely. That's exactly what we're
How
doing.
great is that?
Yep, and yeah, and my kids are doing it. This is all integrated. This is not something we just preach.
Yeah.
We do this as a matter of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. My resolution, my goal,
Mhm.
I carried over a goal, and
Yeah.
that is to work on accepting feedback better. I noticed once I left large work organizations,
Yeah.
because there aren't a lot of large groups running around providing feedback to each other here in Vermont. Um,
Except
it's
your
supposed to be
wife.
a joke.
Except your wife.
Oh yeah, no, I get feedback from my wife.
I'm sure you do.
That's happened for 35 years. Um, but I've noticed that I've gotten out of practice
Hmm.
of accepting feedback.
Interesting.
So I'm trying to self-talk myself into what are the good behaviors associated with taking feedback and either using it or not using it.
Yeah, that's good.
Because the fact of the matter with feedback is, once you accept it, then you own it. You can either use it
Yeah.
or you don't have to use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, I kind of got out of the practice of accepting feedback. So that's kind of my big carryover from 2020 because
Yeah.
I think I can still do better at that.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
anyway, that's not what this podcast is on. You know what this podcast is on?
I do. Anytime, anywhere learning.
Yeah, what does that mean to you, Matt?
Oh,
Because we talk to a lot of parents,
yeah.
and I don't know about you, but when I throw out this anytime, anywhere learning,
Yeah.
it kind of freaks them out.
Right. They look at you
It's
kind of
like what are you talking
what
about?
yeah, what language are you speaking,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. It's one of those. I don't know whether it's a buzzword. I know it's not a buzzword in traditional school, but it might be a buzzword in the learner-centered, uh, group that
Yeah.
we kind of hang around,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but what does it mean to you, man?
Yeah, I think why it's a weird kind of statement is because most people think of anytime anywhere school as opposed to anytime anywhere learning. So for me, anytime anywhere learning is essentially that at all times, anywhere I go, there's an opportunity for me to be learning something specific, something valuable, something that I'm going to use, to help improve myself or to help improve this broken world. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly kind of what we were talking about in terms of the goals for this year, right? I,
Right,
we're going to learn a
right.
bunch of stuff, and it has nothing to do with school. I'm going to be reading in the evenings and on weekends. We're going to go hopefully take some trips. It's all that. Yep.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah. So I think that anytime, anywhere learning helps us and parents answer one of our big questions when it comes to developing smarter and stronger young learners.
Hmm.
And that big question, of course, is what do we want them to learn?
Yeah.
But like anytime, anywhere adds like I think two like really important sub questions, if you will. And those sub questions are when can I learn this and where can I learn this?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think one of the issues, let's just kind of take on that first question. When can I learn this?
Hmm.
So you know this. Traditional schools still seem to think that learning should occur between 8 and 3 daily between the months of August and May, right?
That's right.
That's crazy.
And many parents think that too, by the way, and many kids think
Yeah.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny to me that like in traditional space, learning work that doesn't happen during those time frames, uh, schools have assigned different terms to that work. So it can't be schoolwork because it's not in school. So they assign terms like homework,
Right. Right.
or if you have to go to school June, July, August, or June, July, it's summer school.
Right.
If you go to school um, before 8 o'clock or after 3 o'clock, it's called early start or after school. That's kind of that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a school-centered language. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like to me, what anytime, anywhere learning allows you to do, I think this is the second important point, is learning work is learning work, no
Hmm.
matter where you do it, when you do it.
Right.
Um, yeah, so let's talk a bit about um, what learning might look like for kids anytime, anywhere. Now, you have some experience with this, right? With your
Hmm.
kids.
Yes, we do. We do. We do a
Yeah.
lot of experience here.
So can you share some stories?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, in fact, the blog post for this week is going to be talking about this. Um, so, anytime, anywhere learning, as you said, Scott, it starts with this question of what do I want to learn? What does my child want to learn, ideally, right? And so, we do something again, be described um, in the blog, but we do something called dream maps. And so, with dream
Dream
map,
maps.
yep, dream map. So the idea came from this.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Say again?
I said fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
Fascinating term.
Well, Scott, nothing that I share comes from my brain. I just steal from other people. I steal it.
You steal from the best.
I do. That's the highest form of flattery, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
I stole this idea. No, I mean, it was offered in a book called High School Without, I'm sorry, College Without High School. And in that book, it talks about how a person can learn all kinds of things outside of a traditional school, and particularly in the ages between like, eighth grade and high school or and graduation. Anyway, so one of the strategies is it starts with this idea of a dream map where the parent and the child brainstorm um, things that they want to do, become, and learn about in the upcoming year. And that brainstorm then creates these sub strategies of how we're going to learn it, where we're going to learn it, when we're going to learn it. And that part is actually really funny to watch because oftentimes if you have a child who has really grown up in the in the school world, when you ask the question, how can you learn this or when can you learn it? or where do you learn it, the answer is almost always school, right? Again, I have, one of the examples I'm giving is a child that may want to want to become an artist, right? And if you ask that kid oftentimes, well, how would you become an artist? They would say, well, I get art books and I go to art class and I take the art course at school. And when you brainstorm really well on this, you start to ask a bunch of different questions, right? Like, well, why couldn't you spend a day with an artist, a professional artist? Why couldn't you because art now is like everywhere, like marketing, like that's all art, visual art. Um, why couldn't you spend an afternoon at a marketing firm watching how they do their work, right? Why couldn't you build a marketing strategy an artwork for a small business in your community? Why couldn't you go and talk to that business? One of the examples I give is, why couldn't you go to a restaurant in your community and ask them if you could draw pictures of their best recipes and maybe make your own menu for that restaurant, right? Or maybe make a art project that advertises, right? These are all like complete brainstorm ideas that I did in 5 minutes, but these are
Yeah.
completely different ways of learning.
Isn't it funny what you just said there? When you first asked that question, the response from your kids was like totally school dependent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to take a class,
Yes.
and I'm going to learn from an art teacher, and only after you started to ask, what we call in the education trade extension questions,
Mm,
were you able to get your kids, your learners,
yeah.
to think outside the box,
Yeah.
at least outside the school box. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's really funny I mean, if you think about it, it just shows how powerful the paradigm of school actually is in our consciousness, right?
Right.
When we think of learning, we think of schools, and that is such an old model, given that learning now can happen anytime, anywhere through computers. As we have learned through COVID, you don't need to go to a building anymore to learn. In fact, your world is your learning space, your classroom, so to speak. But it is interesting, though, to see how hard it is sometimes for kids and adults to break out of that mold. And
Yeah.
I got some.
So this podcast is especially designed to help parents kind of work through this anytime, anywhere learning. So what I'd like you to do, Matt, is think about one of your dream stories, and if you could, just take a parent through from beginning to, I don't even know whether any of these have ended, right?
Yeah, no,
They're
they're
they're still they're
yeah,
still going on, right?
right. And what we'll do, Scott, I put a tutorial together on video, and we'll
Nice,
add that to our web, or to the blog, I guess, as a link. But
nice.
yeah, so let me walk through that. So it starts with the dream map. Again, the idea about the dream map is you're asking your child now to start to take ownership of their learning, rather than to wait for someone else to tell them, here's what we're going to learn about today in this course, or we're going to read about what this author wants you to learn about. So that's really one of the key points about this dream map. So you sit down, hang out in the living room, or go on a walk at the park, and with a notepad, and you're going to ask the question, um, what would you do, son or daughter, if you knew that you could not fail? What what tell me the things that you would pursue if you knew you could not fail? Because there's a
That's a
full time,
great dream question,
isn't it?
right?
It's a great
Take the
question.
fear of failure off the table.
But let's pause for a second, Scott. Let's
Yeah.
remember why failure is such a common feeling for our young learners. It's because in a school environment, if they take a risk on something, If they want to learn about something that the teacher doesn't want to learn about, um, even if they love the learning, they're risking, being called a failure, right? So in a school environment, a child's job is to conform to whatever the structure is that has been given to them, right? What this process is trying to do is to turn that on its head. Child, what do you want to learn about? And let's eliminate fear and just start to imagine, right? And the more ideas, the better on this, because the idea of a dream map is that it is a never-ending process. It begins in this conversation between the parent and child, but over time, the child will begin to dream. And just like I did this past, end of year and really looking into 2021, I am going, here are the dreams I have for 2021. I'm going to now build the structure because I know how to build the structure, right? So we're now teaching the child how to do the same.
Are we grading this, Matt?
That's right. If they don't do it well by a certain time, they fail, right? Yes.
No, now I'm kidding about that
Dude,
question,
of
but
course.
what I'd like you to speak to is this whole dynamic between learner growth and learner grading, right? It
Mhm.
sounds to me like what you're describing is growing things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're like, as the leader of this learning, you're not even worried about grading
No.
right now,
No. In
right?
fact,
You're just trying to, like, if you're a gardener, this is all about tilling the soil, fertilizing,
that's right.
getting in there and helping plants grow.
That's right. Making the conditions for success likely.
Exactly.
By the way,
Yeah.
Scott, we need to add in as we're doing these kind of weekly focuses, we need to add grades into it somewhere. I don't know where that
Oh,
is.
let's do it.
Well, we absolutely
Yeah.
need to do that because there's so many
Yeah.
times that kids get tripped up, parents get tripped up on these issues
Sure.
of grades. So, yes,
Sure.
there's no grading involved here because again, if the child is individually motivated, then why does someone else need to come in and grade them? Right? The child wants to become. Let me give you an example. So you asked for a specific example, Scott. So let me start with. Um, I've got a daughter who um, actually two of my daughters and my wife all mentioned that they wanted to have something this year. They wanted to do something related to singing or dancing. Right. So my daughters said they wanted to be on Broadway. They saw Hamilton this past year, and I mean, we just they're still singing the songs to this day. So they wanted to. That's one of their dreams, right? My wife is a beautiful singer, and she said, well, maybe I'd like to sing, at church or someplace like that. So now we have overlap between my daughters and my wife. So now we have some interesting opportunities to work together, which is a whole nother conversation we could have about the relational aspects of having these conversations
Yes.
with parents or with children.
Yes. Everyone learning,
Everyone, yes, everyone
right?
learning, right? Everyone
Yeah.
being
It's,
a willing to risk,
yeah.
and then us maybe learning collaboratively, right?
Yeah.
So for the folks my daughters who wanted to, become Broadway musicians or singers and dancers this year, we
Yeah.
said, all right, let's start to build that out. How and what is it? When do you have to learn that, or how would you learn how to do that? How do you create the structures? Um, and we began to flush out the details of that. And so some examples of it are I've got one daughter who's going to learn a dance by watching YouTube videos. There's a whole network of dances on YouTube that are just to be taught, right? Anyone can learn them. And so my daughters are going to learn a dance. I think it was a dance a month, and then perform it with video, and then put it onto their YouTube channel, and then push it out to let folks know
Nice.
about it, right?
Nice.
Um,
Well, Matt, I find this fascinating, this story. But, one of the things I'm thinking about is, okay, how about if they don't make it to Broadway, right?
yeah, who
No,
cares,
no big deal, right?
right?
Just think about the joy that this pursuit is going to give them, even if they end up in community theater, right? Even if they
Yeah,
like end up in some, yeah, right?
Sing and dance at their church, because that's probably where that's probably the high water mark for this upcoming year,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Nice,
But
nice.
again, what we're doing is we're getting a child to learn how to inspire themselves, right? You don't you,
Yeah,
when you ask that question of a child, it gives them the chance to search their heart for what
yeah,
really is inside of them that they want to bring forth but have never been able to do so.
yeah. Have they hit any plateaus yet? Have
Uh,
they hit any roadblocks? And I think parents would be interested in hearing, how are you? How is your wife? Well, for that matter, how are your other kids supporting the person that might be plateaued or roadblocked?
yeah, great question. So for the parents that move in this direction, I can't really speak to what's happening this year because we just started it a week ago.
Sure.
But I can definitely speak to what happened last year. And so last year, we had a lot of times when the child was going to do something and then they faltered, they plateaued in terms of their motivation, or they kind of lost track of it, right? So they said they agreed they were going to do, like I mentioned, last year, one of my daughters is going to put together a monologue, learn a monologue, record it, and then put it on YouTube once a week. Now that's kind of a high, it's kind of a challenging, standard, and she stopped meeting it at a certain point. And so what we did was that was the time to begin to do an evaluation. Okay, so let's go
Yes.
back. So you set once a week. Um, what does it take to do this once a week? It took her memorizing a poem, it took her setting it up on, for the video, and then actually recording it and then downloading it on YouTube. It was actually quite a few steps. She got tired. And so the
Yeah.
conversation was, okay, so when we set up goals, there's a expectation that at some point our motivation will actually fade. So what could we have done differently next time? If we had gone back in time and done it again, what would we have done? And so some of the things that came up was, instead of having one per week, let's look at one every other week, right? So let's slow the burden down so it doesn't require such intense effort for me to do it. Because the other thing that she learned is, as she now began to get better at it, it took less and less and less time. So again, so if we were to go back in time, she would have said one every other week, or maybe one every third week.
Yeah.
And as she got better at it, maybe she would drop it to one every other week, and then eventually maybe one every week as she got
Yeah.
better at doing that. Right? She burned out.
Yeah. Which is totally okay.
Perfectly okay.
I've kind of become not a great cook, but I like to cook now. And I follow Sam Sifton.
Hmm.
He's a New York Times food editor.
Okay.
And one of the things Sam taught me is, Scott, like he literally said, Scott. No, he didn't.
You're that close. You're that close.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
just called me up one day,
Yeah.
said, Scott, no, I read this, but this is what he said. Don't be so concerned about sticking to the recipe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's an aha moment for me in cooking.
Hmm.
But I started to think about that as a learner. Parents, don't be so concerned about the recipe.
Hmm.
Let the learner make some things up.
Yep.
Let the learner try, right? Try and adjust. We talk about this all the time, right, Matt?
Oh, yes, we do.
Practice, adjust,
Yep.
practice, adjust, practice, adjust, evaluate, practice, adjust,
Yep.
practice, adjust, right?
So
And let's just go back to these places called school. I don't think schools allow as much latitude as what is needed for trying,
no, there's a schedule that must be kept.
right?
And once that chapter or that section is covered, and you didn't master it, we're moving on. And even if you want to continue it, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so go ahead and finish the story because I kind of interrupted. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So
So
so where are they with their dream stories right now?
Yeah, so this year they've created new dream stories and they're in the process of implementing. Now, the key thing that I will share with every parent, this is the most important learning that I had as we've been doing this the last now probably year and a half, 2 years, is that the most essential role that the parent can play is in these check-ins. And so, what a check-in really looks like is the parent reminding the child of what their dream was, asking how the child is progressing towards it, asking if the child needs help in creating more structure to achieve it. Because again, for my kids, I realized this. They did not know how to do this work. It's hard. This is adult level stuff. They didn't know how to do it. So when they were having struggle, they started to get discouraged, to your point, Scott. Like, I didn't do a recording last week. That's okay. Let's talk about why. Well, I just got tired. I'm tired. I don't, that's okay. So let's now think about what we could have done in the past to have changed that. And let's not feel guilty about it. What do you want to do now? Do you want to continue? Do you want to do it every third week? Do you want to do it once a month? Do you want to just ignore it and find something else to do? Right? Because again, what the whole point about this is not that the child achieves their dream of going to Broadway, to your point earlier, Scott. The point is that the child learns how to learn. They learn how to manage their own learning. Once a child knows how to do that, you can step away and let them roll, right? That's the
Okay,
aim.
let me just stop you right there because parents, pay attention to Matt here. He's talked about two very important aspects of anytime, anywhere learning. Through this check in, the importance of in the business what we call cognitive coaching,
Mm,
right? And that is, we aren't going to tell the learner what they need to come up with as an outcome. We're going to ask them really good questions that allow their brains to lead them to the outcomes,
right,
right?
right,
And
right.
the second thing is it's okay to try and move on,
Yep.
right? There is no harm in that, right? Parents, think about your normal day, right? My wife is starting to learn how to knit.
Mm,
This is like a New Year's activity for
yeah,
her,
yeah.
and she's really getting engaged with it. Now, if someday I look at her and she's not knitting, she's doing something else, am I going to say, "Why aren't you knitting?" Of course not, because possibly she'll come back to it. She
Yeah,
needs a little break, right?
yeah,
Or she's moved on to other things.
yeah, yeah. Well, so that actually brings up another interesting thing, Scott. So, for several years, we tried to push our son to play the piano, right? Like a lot of families do, right?
Oh
You're gonna
yeah, tell this story. This story's great. Yeah.
right. You're going to learn, you know, if
You're
it
going to
feels
practice
right.
30 minutes every day
Exactly.
from 5:30 to 6
Create a
o'clock.
chart, check a
Let's
box.
build it in the schedule.
It's right. Check the box when you've completed your 30 minutes of check-in. So this is the opposite of um, the Tiger Mom strategy, right?
Yeah.
We did introduce it to him. We do have a piano in our home, so that's a lot of families don't have access to that sort of thing. But when school went virtual back in March, in April or May, he started just dinking around on the piano, just a little bit. And then it turned into a little bit more. And I tell
There
you
you
what,
go.
Scott, he is playing now 2 hours a day. Did you hear me? 2 hours a day. Now, the question you got to ask is several
That's
times.
awesome.
Oh, I did ask him this. I said, so son, what do you think? Would you be playing like this if you were in school? And he smiled and said no. And
Not a
so
chance.
that's the first piece, right? You create space for the child to now to find things that they actually really enjoy. The second takeaway is how much relational damage would I have had to do to get him to practice 2 hours a day?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have had to sit on this kid, right? And then
Yeah.
guess what? He once I stopped sitting on him, he would never play it again in his life,
Yeah.
which is what we tend to do with all learning. We force the child to learn stuff that they don't care about, and then we're surprised when they disengage. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been
That's
really
that's
cool.
a fantastic story. Okay, so we're kind of up on time.
Yeah.
I want to hit on three big points for parents around anytime, anywhere learning as we head out of this podcast.
Okay.
So the first, we talked about this earlier in the week. Um, anytime, anywhere learning provides the learner access to what we call primary sources.
Mm-hmm.
You remember this conversation,
I do. Yep.
right? And so primary sources are things like the art, like an artist,
A
not the art
professional,
teacher,
a professional
but
artist.
like a professional artist.
Mm-hmm.
One of your daughters is doing some work around homelessness, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the primary source is the nonprofit director who's working on homelessness in Houston,
Exactly.
right?
She met with him a few weeks ago. Yep.
Juxtaposed with how schools oftentimes still conduct their business. And that is the only way that you get primary sources is either through someone who's visiting your classroom or you take a field trip.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll give schools a little credit. I think they're doing more outreach online, especially like now.
Yeah.
But nothing compared to your stories around dreams and the work, in the dance community, the homeless community, right?
Yep. Yep.
So this primary source material, I was thinking early in the podcast when you're talking about going and studying with a professional artist, I think one of the things that happened in this country is once we formalized school, we lost something that had prior to that formation, that formalization of school, that we lost something that was really, really important in American education. You know what that was called?
Apprenticeship.
The apprenticeship, right?
Yep.
So parents, here's a point. Anytime, anywhere learning. Go out and find professionals. They don't even have to be professionals.
Right.
Grandparents, uncles, aunts that know something, right? And that your kid gets all geeked up about, and build it into an apprenticeship.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, right, Matt?
It is, and you, Scott, so many things you're describing reminded me of things that I would love to tell our audience. I mean, as an example, one of my daughters wants to. She's really into acting, and so she wants to now do sewing and what is it called? Like the clothing, the dressing. What is that called?
Fashion design,
Yeah, but really aimed at
a
the
costume design.
costume design. Yes,
Yeah.
and so guess what? For the last 2 months, she's been working with her grandmother, right? To
Awesome.
to build or to what is it? Sew, I guess. I don't even know this area, right? But to sew dresses that could be dresses that are used in a costume. And so not only is she now connecting with her grandmother, right? But she's also learning a skill.
Say no more.
Right, exactly. That's
Say no
all.
more.
That's the
That's
best.
that's like
Right.
it,
Yeah.
right?
So there's
Everything else is icing on the cake.
Amen, brother.
Connecting with grandma.
Amen. Yep. Yep.
Awesome.
It is.
Awesome.
It is.
All right. Here's the second quick point.
Yep.
This is for parents. Anytime, anywhere learning can allow your kids to let their learning become what in the business is called socially embedded. And I want to read this to you.
Please.
We use the term socially embedded to refer to a learning model in which one, a learning community has been intentionally created that provides everyone with a place to be known and a place to belong. And two, the social nature of learning has been consistently enabled and it is emphasized as a central part of the learning experience.
Excellent.
Wow.
That's fantastic, right? Imagine every kid having that.
Yeah, that's transformational,
Oh, yeah.
right? The value that comes to a kid when they are in a learning environment that offers those two gifts. I don't know many places called schools that can offer those gifts to every kid.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right, here's the third.
Okay.
The third point before we say goodbye today.
Okay.
Anytime, anywhere learning depends on an open-walled perspective and direction. So let me just read this to you quick.
Yep.
This comes from our friends at Education Reimagined, by the way. Google Education Reimagined Lexicon, Lexicon. In fact, we might be able to
send a post on it.
Send a link to this. But this is what they say about open-walled. What do we mean when we say that a learning experience is open-walled? Taking the term literally, we mean that the experience is not walled in. The idea is that learning is not limited to a closed box called the classroom or the school. It can happen anywhere and anytime. And learning is not limited to a traditional school day or school year. It can happen anytime. Open-walled means that education is invited to take place outside the primary learning environment, and at the same time, the outside world is invited into the primary learning environment. In either direction, such learning is open-walled. The walls are open.
That's right. Yep. No more walls, dude.
So here's something for parents that have their kids in traditional space. Just because you send your kid to a place called school doesn't mean that you can't open walls.
Right.
Right? You say this a lot, Matt. There's 185 days that are not school time.
Exactly.
What are we doing as learning leaders, as parents, to help kids open their space?
That's right. That's right. Preacher.
I'm preaching a little bit. Well, this has been a fantastic. Well, I always think these are fantastic. I think the proof in the pudding is, are we helping parents?
I hope we are.
So dream stories, parents, think about dream stories. Think about linking your kids to primary sources.
That's right.
The experts. These don't have to be like world experts.
Yep.
Pretty much in every community, every neighborhood, there is an expert at something. I love the story about your daughter spending time with grandma.
Oh, yeah.
Because, oh my God, the social emotional meters are just like, going crazy on that.
Huge.
Think about socially embeddedness, that the anytime, anywhere learning can provide equity that sometimes we can't find inside of these places called school.
That's right.
And then the last one is open walled. Sort of open your walls, open your minds.
That's right. Good stuff, Scott.
Okay, this week is anytime, anywhere learning, and be looking for a I don't know what we're going to call it, a newsletter. We send something out to our fans every week. It'll be coming out sometime this week, as will this podcast, I think.
Right.
And we have committed to taking on a how-to topic for parents. I think we've planned out maybe 8 weeks.
That's right.
So just stay tuned with the podcast. Always go to our website, theeducationgame.com. We always want to thank Bo York, who produces the podcast for Podistry Studios.
Yep.
Anything I've forgotten, Matt?
No, that's good stuff. Good conversation.
Okay, we're going to sign off. Everyone have a great 2021, and we'll see you soon.
All right.